When I came to the United States, because I fell in love with Willie, I fell in lust with Willie at the time.
Your second novel, Of Love and Shadows, brought Willie, your husband, into your life. Isabel, let's bring your husband Willie into our conversation.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you, Willie, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Willie, you read Isabel's book Of Love and Shadows and fell in love with it. Why?
Well, I had read this book and I thought, well, this woman speaks about love the way I understand it, and so I would like to meet her.
Ah, and how did you make it to meet a famous best-selling author? I mean, I suppose many men would like to meet Isabel Allende.
You wish.
I bet. I bet. A friend of mine had given me that book for my birthday, and I took it to Italy and I read it. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow, I'd like to meet this woman because she describes love the way I understand it. So I wrote her a postcard and told her that I wanted to meet her. And when I got back, I called her, and she said, well, if you want to meet her, you better hurry because she's going to be here in 2 days. So I went to San Jose, and I met her.
Mm-hmm. And you met her at her reading or afterwards as well?
Just afterwards, she was with an older gentleman from...
There was a dinner party afterward.
Okay.
And so she and I locked in, and actually after that, she never really left. She kind of...
She tried to push me away, but I didn't leave.
So that was the way it started.
By now, 3 books of yours have been published in several languages and as well in German. So you were a lawyer for decades. And how did you go from being a lawyer to being a fiction writer as well?
Well, I was always going to be a writer. I always knew I would be at least 60 years old before I started. You see, my father was a writer. He wrote the original Infinite Plan, and we swiped the title of that book for the one that Isabel wrote.
What was this Infinite Plan about?
It's about a religion that my father invented, and I used to watch my mother type the manuscripts for my father when I was just a child. So I knew that I was going to do it. I was in my genes, so to speak. And you know, when I became a lawyer, I had to practice with a master. And so Isabel was my writing master. She showed me how to do it. I would discuss scenes with her, and I discovered in that process that I had the same view or imagination that she did. I would visualize things, and then so I knew when I started that I was on the right track, and then I had my master.
Mm-hmm. So it seems to be, it takes a lot of confidence to decide midlife to become a writer when you are married with one of the most celebrated fiction writers. What gave you the courage?
What am I, a potted plant? I'm okay. I'm me.
He has a lot of self-confidence.
So I always knew I was going to be a writer, so what was the problem?
So you always knew this means also when you were 20, or when did it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You see, I used to watch my father give a speech, a sermon, and the whole time I was a writer, he did this with an orange hanging from the ceiling, and he would talk to these people for 2 hours.
What was the orange for?
The universe. He was talking. Yeah. And so, when I was a lawyer, I never forgot that, and I would practice keeping people interested and telling them a story, but I would make sure it was only a half an hour. So I already knew how to tell the story and how to keep them interested. And it was like, I've been practicing that for 40 years as a lawyer.
So when you say Isabel was your master, what did you learn from Isabel?
Oh, Christ, she tore everything I did apart. And you said you can't, I mean, for instance, I wrote my first book, and it was about an oversexed dwarf, and she said nobody in their right mind would ever want to sleep with that creature.
Then you explored the mystery genre and write a series. And
I actually wrote a short story called All You Can Eat. And it was about a guy who lived in the sewer and dressed in tuxedos every night and stole his food from cocktail parties. And one of my one of my editors, my court reporter actually, read this and she said, God, this is better than the book you wrote. Why don't you turn this into a story? So that's where my first book came from.
But where did you get the inspiration for your characters?
Well, the character for the guy in the tuxedo, Der Tote in smoking, came from an article I read in the New York Times 50 years ago about this bum that used to live in the sewer and dress in a tuxedo.
Yeah, but for your series, you invented as well Samuel, the journalist.
I'm not sure where Samuel came from.
Always comes.
Yeah, Melba, for instance, was a partner of mine in a bar I owned for 25 years, and I didn't change one hair on her head. That's exactly the way she was.
So the smoking lady.
Smoking, drinking, cursing.
Irish lady.
Yeah, she was a character. And so, and she gave strength to Samuel, who I had an anti-noir, I wanted to create an anti-noir character. Someone who was not a tough guy. And he could then rely on everybody else to help him. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I started out stumbling. I also wanted him to develop. Mm-hmm. As he has gone slowly over the course of my books, he has become a much more compelling, strong character. Mm-hmm. But at the time, he was depressed, drunk, he was just a mess. Mm-hmm. And so and that's the way I wanted him. So,
are your characters based on role models?
Sometimes. But generally speaking, I'm trying to get at something else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting is that your books also give an insight to the Mexican immigrants scene field. And how does it come? I mean, did you represent as a lawyer many immigrants?
Of course, for all my clients were illegal aliens, and I also grew up with these people from the time my father died.
And it was good that you spoke fluently Spanish, because when you met you didn't speak English, right?
Very little.
Spanglish.
Very little.
You talked Spanglish, so
we go back and forth, but mainly Spanish, I would say.
When her books go to Spain, they have a reader, and the reader's job is to get rid of the Willyismos.
Take away all the things that I use from his...
Because if I don't know a word in Spanish, I invent it, just like Shakespeare. Print that.
So, by the way, in your latest book, the Ugly Dwarf appears again.
Yeah, but transformed. He's a much better person. What I didn't like of the first dwarf was that he was not a real character. He was a caricature. And as we have talked about the Ugly Dwarf for years, it has become a person.
But more importantly, I couldn't let this character go, and I did not really understand it until I had written the Ugly Dwarf again. And by the way, that was not the title I wanted to use. I wanted to use the Oversexed Dwarf, but nobody
wanted it.
The Oversexed Dwarf, right. How did you get this character?
Well, that's what I'm going to tell you now. And so I had my father in mind, because my father was emotionally a dwarf, even though he was...
But not physically?
No, physically he was a tall, handsome guy, but he was really messed up. He was a womanizer, a child molester, he was a drunk, he was just he was a mess. And so I finally realized when I was writing this book, The Ugly Dwarf, that I had to make a statement about him. Now, there's a suggestion of my father in my first book. There's a magician who's a drunk and ends up doing tarot cards. And that's also poking fun at my father. But this time I got serious, and I really wanted to make a statement about him. And I also included his snotty bitch of a partner.
Yes, Dominique.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now, he had a partner who was into black magic, and she was really a thief. And so I wanted to talk about her too, and so I just threw it all in there, and I got rid of it. I got finished with it.
So did you live together as well with these partners?
No.
Partner?
But she was around all the time, and always with her hand taking the money away. And it's really amazing, because when I never read The Infinite Plan by my father, but I had a sermon that the dwarf gave, and after the sermon was over, I decided I better read The Infinite Plan because I wanted it to resemble my father. And I read this book and I was shocked because
Why?
Because it was a pretty good work of literature. It was fiction.
I see.
It was not a religion, really. It was a novel.
Yeah.
It was a novel. And he just invented a way, said, do as I say, not as I do, and follow this path. Remember, he's leading a miserable life. He's all messed up. But he says, if you do these wonderful things, you'll be saved.
But he didn't follow his own words.
No, I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was too human.
So, Willie, you have started your life in literature, and Isabel, you have spent your life in literature. Is it worth it?
Oh, definitely for me. It's been wonderful. It's a great, I struggled all my life fighting for social justice, and to take a breather and then to be able to comment on it and complete the circle and say all my life I'm going to be a writer, and then to become a writer, it's like completing the circle. So I'm very happy. Very happy.
And do you easily write?
Well, I do it my way. I can sit down for 11 minutes at a time, and that's the way I do it. But, I heard Clive Owen, the actor, talking the other day, and he was talking about getting scripts, and they're always saying, give me it. Let me tell, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And he'd say, be patient. I like to mull things over. Well, that's the way I do it. I take an idea, and I turn it all around, and I'm not in a hurry. And
I'm in a hurry.
She's in a hurry.
Yeah, but you work 8 hours sometimes a day for when you or more when you write a novel. So is that worth it for you?
Of course. Of course it's worth it.
In which way?
In every way. It gives me a voice. It allows me to understand the world better. I have the feeling that because I am for so long in silence, I hear things and I tap into a collective feeling, a collective emotion, fear, desire, whatever. And it connects me to people. I feel that every book is like an extended hand that the reader shakes. And having so many readers means that I'm connected to all those people who spent hours with me in a story.
And I think 8 to 10 hours a day about what I'm doing, but I don't sit down in front of the computer and do it. Yeah. But I'm always thinking, turning the character around, turning the situation, looking for the right person or the right atmosphere.
And you can create a world.
That's also wonderful, yeah.
So, Isabel, Willie, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.